Hey guys, Dark Desert Highway here, and today I'm actually home, first time in 6 months. So today I wanted to read a story about when the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistines. Now, this isn't one of those stories where I'm going to go in depth into some hidden meaning. It's basically just going to be reading a few chapters out of the Bible. So I hope you're ready. We're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 4. And Samuel let's go up a little bit to 3:19. Samuel grew, the Lord was with him, and he fulfilled everything Samuel prophesied. All Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a confirmed prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear in Shiloh because there he revealed himself to Samuel by his word. And Samuel's words came to all Israel. Now, the ark captured by the Philistines. Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle and camped at Ebenezer, while the Philistines camped at Aphek. The Philistines lined up in battle formation against Israel, and as the battle intensified, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who struck down about 4,000 men on the battlefield. When the troops returned to the camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord defeat us today before the Philistines? Let's bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh. It will go with us and save us from our enemies." So the people sent men to Shiloh to bring back the ark of the covenant of the Lord of armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of the covenant of the Lord entered the camp, all the Israelites raised such a loud shout that the ground shook. The Philistines heard the sound of the war cry and asked, "What's this loud shout in the Hebrews' camp?" When the Philistines discovered that the ark of the Lord had entered the camp, they panicked. "And a God has entered their camp," they said. "Woe to us! Nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who will rescue us from these magnificent gods? They are the gods that slaughtered the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Show some courage, men. Philistines, be men. Otherwise, you'll serve the Hebrews just as they served you. Now be men and fight." So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and each man fled to his tent. The slaughter was severe. 30,000 of the Israelite foot soldiers fell. The ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. So, what I noticed is there wasn't instructions by the Lord to bring the Ark of the Covenant into the next battle, because their first battle they had been defeated. And the men questioned each other and said, "Why has God suffered us to be defeated today?" And then they all decided together on their own to bring the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh to the next battle. And the Philistines heard that the Ark of the Covenant was there, and because the Lord had shown himself mighty in past events, they remembered that. They were like, "This is the God that slaughtered the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness." But the Philistines didn't back down. They went out to fight again, and the Israelites were defeated again. And this time, the Ark of the Covenant was captured. So let's continue. That same day, a Benjamite man ran from the battle and came to Shiloh. His clothes were torn, and there was dirt on his head. When he arrived, there was Eli sitting on his chair beside the road waiting, because he was anxious about the ark of God. When the man entered the city to give a report, the entire city cried out. Eli heard the outcry and asked, "Why this commotion?" The man quickly came and reported to Eli. At that time, Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes didn't move because he couldn't see. The man said to Eli, "I'm the one who came from the battle. I fled from there today." "What happened, my son?" Eli asked. The messenger answered, "Israel has fled from the Philistines, and also there was a great slaughter among the people. Your 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are both dead, and the ark of God has been captured." When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward off his chair by the city gate, and since he was old and heavy, his neck broke and he died. Eli had judged Israel 40 years. Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and about to give birth. When she heard the news about the capture of God's ark and the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband, she collapsed and gave birth because her labor pains came on her. As she was dying, the woman taking care of her said, "Don't be afraid. You've given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory of the Lord has departed from Israel," referring to the capture of the ark of God and to the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband. "The glory has departed from Israel," she said, because the ark of God has been captured. So, Israel was defeated. They went to go get the ark, bring it to them in the battle. Israel was defeated again. The ark had been captured. The Philistines now possessed the ark. Everybody in the city has heard about it. The ark has been captured. Interesting. Now let's see what happens after that in chapter 5. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod, brought it into the temple of Dagon, and placed it next to his statue. When the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, there was Dagon, fallen, with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and returned him to his place. So their false god, named Dagon, had a statue, and they placed the ark of God next to in the temple of Dagon and placed it next to his statue. And when the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, there was Dagon, fallen with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and returned him to his palace. But when they got up early the next morning, there was Dagon, fallen with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. This time, Dagon's head and both of his hands were broke off and lying on the threshold. Only Dagon's torso remained. That is why, still today, the priests of Dagon and everyone who enters the temple of Dagon in Ashdod do not step onto Dagon's threshold. The Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod. He terrified the people of Ashdod and its territory and afflicted them with tumors. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of Israel's God must not stay here with us, because his hand is strongly against us and our god Dagon." So they called all the Philistine rulers together and asked, "What should we do with the ark of Israel's God?" "The ark of Israel's God should be moved to Gath," they replied. So they moved the ark of Israel's God. After they had moved it, the Lord's hand was heavy against the city of Gath, causing a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city from the youngest to oldest with an outbreak of tumors. The people of Gath then sent the ark of God to Ekron. But when it got there, the Ekronites cried out, "They've moved the ark of Israel's God to us to kill us and our people." The Ekronites called the Philistine rulers together. They said, "Send the ark of Israel's God away. Let it return to its place so it won't kill us and our people." For the fear of death pervaded the city. God's hand was oppressing them. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up into heaven. So it's interesting that the Ark of the Covenant had such a history behind it that people knew about the stories of the victories of Israel when the Ark of the Covenant was in their possession in battle. But this time, Israel lost, and they captured just the Ark. Now the Israelites went home, and the Ark of God went out to the cities of these people among and into the temples of their false gods. And it's interesting that without any Israelite interference, the Ark of the Covenant brought about, and the Lord brought about, diseases and tumors and panic and terrifying whatever it does. I don't know if you've ever been terrified before. The feeling of panic, like maybe an anxiety attack. But that is what happened to the people, and they're passing the Ark of the Covenant between themselves, saying, "Get it out of here. Man, this thing is causing us trouble." So they passed it on to another city, and they're like, "This thing cannot stay here." Pass it on to another city, and they're like, "We don't want this thing." They're like, "Send it back. Send it back where it came from." So let's go to chapter 6, the return of the ark. When the ark of the Lord had been in Philistine territory for 7 months, the Philistines summoned the priests and the diviners and pleaded, "What should we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we can send it back to its place." They replied, "If you send the ark of Israel's God away, do not send it without an offering. Send back a guilt offering to him, and you will be healed. Then the reason his hand hasn't been removed from you will be revealed." They asked, "What guilt offering should we send back to him?" And they answered, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold mice, corresponding to the number of Philistine rulers, since there was one plague for both you and your rulers. Make images of your tumors and of your mice that are destroying the land. Give glory to Israel's God, and perhaps he will stop oppressing you, your gods, and your land. Why harden your hearts as the Egyptians and the Pharaoh hardened theirs? When he afflicted them, didn't they send Israel away, and Israel left? So here it is again. They bring back the fame of the stories of the land of Egypt when Israel was let go from their oppression and slavery. These stories are still rumored and well known by the people of the territories of the place. And this is one of the reasons that, you'll notice that God likes to show himself to nations, show himself strong to nations. And what happened in with Pharaoh and the Egyptians, that caused a lot of fables and stories and rumors, and people talked about it. And it wasn't a small thing. Um, Sometimes we don't really see the immense proportion of God's miracles that he worked with Israel in their freedom from slavery. We're talking millions of people, at least a million of just the Hebrew nation, at least a million, because they didn't count the women and the children. So you have the entire land of Egypt. You have a million Israelites, who they later became to be known as Israelites. And then after they had been freed from the Egyptians, they wandered in the desert for 40 years with a giant pillar of fire and a giant cloud that covered a million people. So the people of the lands around them would look out onto the land and see a giant cloud and a whole bunch of people following it around for 40 years, and a giant pillar of fire for 40 years. And then it's finally come time to take possession of the promised land, and they slaughter all. They're successful in their victories against the peoples of the nations that they captured, because the Lord had promised them this land. And so, I mean, they're famous. They're infamous. The Lord is infamous. He's famous, but to the enemy, he is known. And it's really interesting that the Ark of the Covenant, the Lord was striking the people who possessed the Ark of the Covenant wrongfully because they had captured it in a battle. But the Lord is oppressing this people. And it just goes to show that there is a God. There is a God, and he is alive. And his terrors will be visited upon you if you presume to take possession of holy things that you have no business having. So the Philistines are seeing that it's not the Israelites. The Israelites aren't the problem. The problem is God. And I wouldn't say that he's a problem to me, or that he's a problem to the enemy. He's a problem to those people who may know of him but aren't part of his promises, and who by their own chasing after false gods and false religions, the Lord became a problem to these Philistines, and they needed to get rid of it. They saw that he was alive, that there is a real God behind this, and he has the ability to do all these things. So all these stories must be true. And so let's keep going. So now they're talking about, how do we get rid of this thing? We got to get rid of this thing. It's causing us to come down with tumors, and we're dying, and there's rats. And so they came up with the idea, let's send 5 gold tumors and 5 gold mice, corresponding to the number of Philistine rulers, since there was one plague for both you and your rulers. Make images of your tumors and of your mice that are destroying the land. Give glory to Israel's God, and perhaps he will stop oppressing you, your gods, and your land. Why harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaohs hardened theirs? When he afflicted them, didn't they send Israel away, and Israel left? Now then, prepare 1 new cart and 2 milk cows that have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away and pin them up. Take the ark of the Lord, place it on the cart, and put the gold objects that you're sending him as a guilt offering in a box beside the ark. Set it off and let it go its way. Then watch. If it goes up the road to its homeland towards Beth Shemesh, it is the Lord who has made this terrible trouble for us. However, if it doesn't, we will know that it was not his hand that punished us. It was just something that happened to us by chance. The men did this. They took 2 milk cows, hitched them to the cart, and confined their calves in the pen. Then they put the ark of the Lord on the cart, along with the box containing the gold mice and the images of their tumors. The cows went straight up the road to Beth Shemesh. They stayed on that one highway, lowing as they went. They never strayed to the right or to the left. The Philistine rulers were walking behind them to the territory of Beth Shemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and saw the ark, they were overjoyed to see it. The cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped there near a large rock. The people of the city chopped up the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. So you got to remember what they were saying. They were saying, look, if when you do this, take the cart and the milk cows and put the box, the Ark of the Covenant, on the cart with the box with the offering. And if it does this, we will know that it's the Lord. But if it doesn't do this, we'll know it's just by chance. And it did exactly. It went straight on its way and did not turn to the right hand or to the left. It went straight up to Beth Shemesh. So it's just another. It's another revelation that the Lord is alive to the people of the Philistines. This thing caused death and mice and tumors, and the people were afflicted and they were oppressed with anxiety and terror, and this thing was troubling them for 7 months. And they're finally sick of it. They're like, look, man, we got to get this thing out of here. Because they suspected that a god had something to do with why that they were suffering. And then they set up a little check, a little, let's see if it's because of this. If this happens, then we will know that a god was here. And if it doesn't happen, it's just by chance. And God's listening, so he knows. He knows exactly what's happening. And he decided to reveal himself to the Philistines of that area, that territory. So, it doesn't say why the Israelites lost the battle, which is interesting. It doesn't say, look, it's because they turned away from the Lord that they lost the battle. They just lost the battle. And the Ark of the Covenant was captured. Maybe I'm right about that. Maybe I'm not. But I didn't see in all these chapters, I didn't see where it explained why the Israelites lost the battle. There must be a reason. They questioned it among themselves. Hey, man, why did we lose this battle? Let's go grab the Ark. Let's go grab the Ark and charge into battle with that. Maybe we'll have victory in that way. But no, it didn't work out that way. And then the Ark of the Covenant was captured. And now the Philistines, they're freaking out because they're being afflicted with disease. And they're like, get this thing out of here. They make up a little thing where they say, okay, let's see if this is really a god that's oppressing us or if it's just by happenstance. It turns out that exactly what they had said came to pass, and they knew whether it was or wasn't because of the Lord. So now it's been revealed to them that it was because of the Lord. So the people of Beth Shemesh chopped up the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites removed the ark of the Lord along with the box containing the gold objects and placed them on the large rock. That day the people of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord. When the 5 Philistine rulers observed this, they returned to Ekron the same day. As a guilt offering to the Lord, the Philistines had sent back 1 gold tumor for each city: Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The number of gold mice also corresponded to the number of Philistine cities of the 5 rulers, the fortified cities and the outlying villages. The large rock on which the ark of the Lord was placed is still in the field of Joshua of Bethshemesh today. God struck down the people of Bethshemesh because they looked inside of the ark. Whoa. He struck down 70 persons. The people mourned because the Lord struck them with such a great slaughter. The people of Bethshemesh asked, "Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom should the ark go from here?" So they peeked. They peeked inside, and God struck down the people of Bethshemesh. He struck down 70 people because they looked inside the ark. So now that people, they're like, this is not something to play with. Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom should the ark go from here? They sent messengers to the residents of Kiriath Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and get it." Chapter 7. So the people of Kiriath Jearim came for the ark of the Lord and took it to Abinadab's house on the hill. They consecrated his son Eleazar to take care of it. Time went by until 20 years had passed since the ark had been taken to Kiriath Jearim. Then the whole house of Israel longed for the Lord. Samuel told them, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, get rid of the foreign gods and the Ashtoreths that are among you. Set your hearts on the Lord and worship only him. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines." So the Israelites removed the Baals and the Ashtoreths and only worshipped God. There it is. There it is. The people were worshiping other gods, and they were being defeated before the Philistines because the Lord had given them the rules. He had set the holy line in the promises and curses in Deuteronomy. And he said, "Follow me with all your heart." But the people were turned away to serve other gods. And Samuel's saying, after 20 years had passed, they got defeated. Then they got the ark. They got defeated again. The ark was taken for 7 months. It returned to them, but somebody peeked inside the box. 70 people died. They were like, "Hey, come down here and get this box. We can't stand before the Holy Lord." And then 20 years passed since the ark had been taken to Kiriath Jearim, and the whole house of Israel longed for the Lord. It's only so long that you can serve false gods before you are worn away by your sin and your misdirection, and you're facing all the consequences of the Lord in your disobedience. And the people longed for the Lord. And Samuel said, "If you are returning to the Lord with all your heart, get rid of the foreign gods and set your hearts on the Lord and worship only him. Then he will rescue you from the Philistines." So the Israelites removed the Baals and the Ashtoreths and only worshiped the Lord. Samuel said, "Gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord on your behalf." When they gathered at Mizpah, they drew water and poured it out in the Lord's presence. They fasted that day, and there they confessed, "We have sinned against the Lord." And Samuel judged the Israelites at Mizpah. When the Philistines heard that all the Israelites had gathered at Mizpah, the rulers marched up towards Israel. When the Israelites heard about it, they were afraid because of the Philistines, because they've been losing battles for 20 years. And the Israelites said to Samuel, "Don't stop crying out to the Lord our God for us so that he will save us from the Philistines." Then Samuel took a young lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. He cried out to the Lord on behalf of Israel, and the Lord answered him. Samuel was offering the burnt offering as the Philistines approached to fight against Israel. The Lord thundered loudly against the Philistines that day and threw them into such a confusion that they were defeated by Israel. Now, how do you win a battle against a God like this, who can throw you into confusion and hand you over to his own people? You can't. You can't fight against the Lord, but when he's fighting for you, I'll tell you what, the battle is yours, because the Lord thundered loudly against the Philistines and threw them into such a confusion that they were defeated by Israel. Then the men of Israel charged out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, striking them down all the way to a place below Beth-kar. Afterward, Samuel took a stone and set it upright between Mizpah and Shen. He named it Ebenezer, explaining, "The Lord has helped us to this point." So the Philistines were subdued and did not invade Israel's territory again. The Lord's hand was against the Philistines all of Samuel's life. The cities from Ekron to Gath, which they had taken from Israel, were restored. Israel even rescued their surrounding territories from Philistine control. There was also peace between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel throughout his life. Every year he would go on a circuit to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and would judge Israel at all these locations. Then he would return to Ramah because his home was there. He judged Israel there, and he built an altar to the Lord there. And then Israel demands a king after this. We are going to get into this. So that was just a story about this one time the enemy took the holy Ark of the Covenant to their own camp, and the consequence that was felt directly from the Lord's hand, because no Israelite brought this upon them. It was God who brought it upon them, and they had known that the Lord was alive. And if they thought that they were terrified by the people that had this box, right? But it wasn't the people, and it wasn't just a box. It was the Lord. All right, guys, that was a long one. Like I said, there wasn't much for me to say about this one. I just wanted to share a story about the time the Ark of the Covenant was captured. I hope you have a good day. Talk to you next time.